Hello, fellow writers. I'm Lewis. That over there is Tolkien, and you have found the Scripturient Society.
Welcome back, writers. We're so glad to have you here in the coolest
Hello,
club
hello.
ever. Is my voice a lot louder than usual?
Okay, yes, but I also
Why?
have been adjusting my headphone settings for D&D, so I'm not sure if it's me or you.
Oh, okay. Well, I
If you
just
can
turned
hear
down
it
my
too,
mic
it
a
might be
little.
you.
Maybe
But
it's me. And guys, am I just blasting out your eardrums?
hello, can
Yeah,
anyone
first of
hear
all, you're
me?
welcome that you're enjoying my sweet dulcet tones at
My
maximum
toins.
volume in your ears. Um, yeah, and also you're hearing the cats fight in the background at maximum volume. I'm gonna throw something at you cats. You have been horrible. Hang on, I have to throw something at the cats.
Oh, we're serious.
Get out, Flora. Flora has been such a bully. I just threw a toy at her. Just threw a little like soft cat toy at her. It never
Nice.
lands because she's fast.
Oh, I thought maybe because you had bad aim or something, but maybe
Well,
both.
that also, it's definitely a combination of the problems.
Yeah.
Anyways, that over there is Karissa Harlow, aka Catherine, aka Lewis. I am Asha Work, aka Tolkien. We are writers, we are friends. We're not lovers because
No.
Carissa's too embarrassed to admit that she's deeply in love with me. She won't even wink back when I wink at her.
Ash is also married, but okay.
To a man, so I can't have a
Well,
woman on the side. Listen, Kendall doesn't have this problem. My co-host at That Pretentious Book Club, our sister podcast, she's my waifu. Why can't
that's
I
right.
have a husband, a waifu, and a mistress? Huh? Why can't I have
Well,
it all?
I'm
Men
not going to be
can.
third
Men do it all the
string.
time.
I am all or nothing, okay? Polygamy is dead. You would hope.
Actually, you know
It's
what? I
not.
really respect that. I like your stance. I like the strength of
Thank
your
you.
stance on that. That was really
Thank
good.
you.
Oh,
I think
God.
a lot about polygamy now ever since I watched that escaping polygamy show, and like it
Mhm.
baffles and infuriates me. And it's not
Yeah.
really that common, but I think about it disproportionately a lot.
Every
So,
time I think about it, I just always think about how the reverse would never work. And that's why you almost
mhm,
never see it
mhm.
because men are very
Logistically,
needy. No offense,
yeah.
men, if you are our listeners. I'm glad that you're here. But a lot of y'all, and you have to admit, a lot of y'all are like needy in these
Mhm,
interesting, like almost childlike ways, whereas women tend to be extremely emotionally needy. But stuff
mhm.
like I have allergies. I
Take
cannot get
care
up
of
to get a
me.
glass of water. And I'm like, you're not dying. I don't understand.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. Like, not funny, haha, but funny, weird. In like the Bible, when it's like David had 300 wives, I'm like, that means he spent maybe one day a year with each of them. Like, those
It's a
girls were
pretty
just
sweet
all,
gig.
they were just friends. They were just
Yeah,
like, great, we only
hanging
have to put
out
up with you for one day,
one
and then I
day.
can take care of my baby and I can have friends, and that's great. Just stay away. Like,
Honestly, that I've never thought about that before, but you're describing a truly excellent life.
yeah, it
Sounds
really,
amazing.
I mean, it's not great in terms of like healthy marriages, but it's
No, we're
probably great
not.
for friendships.
Yes, we're not in favor of polygamy for the marital
Not.
relationship, but if you are a very, very, very rich man, like rich the level of King David, and you
Hmm.
spend one day a year with your wives, and otherwise they all just get to be friends and hang out and like be rich together, that's about as good as polygamy can get. It's still
Yeah,
not, we still don't approve, but
it's
if
not
that is
great, but
not
it's
your
better
situation,
than
you better not
nothing.
even try it because that is
Yeah,
best case scenario. That is the only not even acceptable. It's the closest we get to an
it's
acceptable
least
scenario.
awful.
There we
Least
go. It's the
awful.
least awful. There we
Yeah.
go. Fantastic. So you're saying that you'd be a sister wife with me if King David married both of us?
If the world was worse and I had no other
Yes.
options,
Well,
absolutely.
I don't know that any of them had the option to not marry King David. This was
Exactly.
Bible times. So I'm saying, yeah, in
Hmm.
that specific scenario where we
Yeah.
have no choice. I'm not like,
I
ooh, I
I
hear
would
he
make the
married
best of it.
Carissa. I'll see if I can get
Yeah.
her to marry me too.
Be like you'd hide away, but then if absolutely necessary, you'd be like, Carissa, can we be friends? And I'd be like, absolutely. That's the only thing that's gonna get me through this.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about though. Javi just texted me and said, dude, what if I developed asthma? And I'm like, maybe.
You
So
could
what? It's possible. It's not
get an
that
inhaler, live
big of
your
a
life.
deal. Exactly. I'm like, there are way people have way bigger problems, bro.
Hmm. Oh
Oh
my
God.
gosh.
Anyways, Catherine, Lewis, Carissa, how
Me.
has your week been? Weeks for all three of you and your personalities.
That's right, all of us. We had the same week. It was good. I think I said maybe a couple episodes back that I have Netflix for a month, right? So and then I'm
Yeah.
going to cancel it so that I don't pay for like the whole year. So I'm kind of like
Yeah.
catching up on things. And I haven't watched any of the things that I wanted to, but I have watched a lot. I've watched a lot of like, murder shows and true crime and stuff like that. But I also recently watched The School of Good and Evil. Have you heard of / seen this?
Yes, I have seen it. I watched it twice because the
Yes.
first time I watched it, Caleb made me watch it while I was cutting my mom's hair. And I said, I don't want to watch this. It's going to be so cheesy and stupid.
Right?
And then I was like,
But
this is kind of metal.
it's kind of
Oh my
awesome.
God. And then I made Kendall watch it and she was like, what did we just watch? And I'm like,
I know.
It's intense, right?
It's so good. Because it does. In my head, it was going to be really similar to The Descendants. Is that the
Yes,
Disney movies?
that's what I thought it was gonna, and I haven't watched it. I just think they look so cheesy, and that's
Right.
exactly what I thought this was gonna be, but it was not.
Yeah, so I was writing and I hit a plot hole and I'm like, just having something mindless and fantasy on in the background might help. And like 2 minutes in, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm so into this. So I ditched the writing for the night and I was like, I'm just gonna watch this movie and be totally into it. And it was so good. And a lot of the people in that movie, I feel like I've seen other places. The girl that plays Agatha was apparently big on Disney, but not when I was watching Disney. So I'm like, why does she look so familiar? She must just have one of those faces or something.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. But it was really good. And I'll get into this a little more with my next one, but I don't fully know. Like, I do think the target demographic was definitely like teenagers, but it's weird because it has kind of like a tweeny premise, but the execution is very adult.
It is. You nailed it. That's exactly what it is.
There's like a lot of sexual tension. Like there were moments where like the blonde girl is like with a guy and like their faces are like right next to each other. And I'm like, what's about to happen here? This is for like 12-year-olds, isn't it?
That's the thing too. Yeah, exactly. I was like, the concept is for 12-year-olds. Exactly. It looks like the execution is for teenagers, but some of the content is for adults. Not like in an inappropriate way, but in a like serious,
it would go over a kid's head.
Yes.
Yeah. And so like I'm like, if you were a parent watching this with your kid, you wouldn't be upset that your kid had seen it, but you would be like looking around like, does anyone else see what's going on here? What's going on?
Exactly, which is why I really enjoyed it. And I'm glad that this movie exists. And I would really like more of these movies. And I think
there's going to be more.
I think there are going to be, yeah. But I think there also used to be more movies that were kind of like that concept, like kind of had that combination. And it was awesome. We called them family movies and they weren't just like stupid. Now when they're like, when you look at like family movies on Netflix, it is all these dumb movies that are just for kids. And I'm like, those aren't family movies. Those are kids movies. This one, The School for Good and Evil, that is a family movie. Inkheart, that is a family movie in the same kind of way. And we want more of them. Hollywood, listen here. We're experts in this and we want more of them.
Yes.
Listen to us. We are the media experts.
Yeah. So obviously,
like, listen to them. They know what they're talking about.
I second that. Yeah, so if you haven't seen The School of Good and Evil, is it for or of? School for Good and Evil? School of Good and Evil, I think.
For, but I don't know.
I don't know.
A while.
Either one, whatever the preposition is. If you've been putting off watching it because you're like, that looks cheesy, it's not. It's super fun and really intense. And I really liked, like, thematically, it was really cool. And like, the costumes, I was going to say music, and I'm like, that's not right. The costumes are really cool and it was just very fun and I liked it. It went in different directions than you assumed it was going to, like every 20 minutes. So it was fun. Yeah. Then I also binged, and don't judge me, Fate the Winx Saga.
Did you really? My mom keeps trying to make me.
Okay. This show was like, it was so confusing to me. Not plot-wise, not like that. It made sense story-wise. Yeah. But okay, so I thought that Winx was a book series. It's not. It was a cartoon. Yes. For like smallish children. Okay.
Yes, because I remember when it was on, because I wasn't allowed to watch it because I think it was on Cartoon Network or maybe like, I don't know. It was on one of the channels that my parents were like picky about what we could and couldn't watch. And my mom has zero memory of it because when Fate the Winx Saga came out on Netflix, she was like, Ash, you have to watch it. It's so good. And I'm like, Mom, it's based on the Winx, the cartoon.
Right.
And I'd seen exactly. And I'd seen like some episodes of as a kid and I like kind of liked it. I enjoyed it. I never got fully into it because by the time my parents stopped caring, I also stopped caring. Yeah. So I just didn't finish watching it, but still I was like, I want to preserve that version of the Winx in my head because it was kind of like really cool in my head. Yeah. And so I refused to watch it and my mom's upset about it. She's like, just watch an episode, Ash.
Yeah. I feel like it could really go either way because here's the thing that I am confused about this show. Okay. First of all, it takes place in like a boarding school scenario, but that starts at age 16, which means it's not like a normal boarding school for high school, but it's also not a college. And so the age group is just kind of strange in that sense. Like they don't have people younger than them, but they're 16, but
Yeah.
then they're not. And the show is trying so hard, I think, to be for adults. And there is so much swearing, so much drug use, so much drinking, and
I
underage
knew
drinking.
there was gonna be. I knew there was
So
gonna
much
be.
casual sex, so much like of all of the things that are just like for adults. And like they exist in YA to a degree, but it was just going like really hard on all of this stuff and very casually, like not even in a discussion sense. Like usually if you have that stuff in YA, it's like some characters are doing it, some characters aren't, and it's like a conversation thing.
Yeah.
But this is just like, hey, everyone does it. And I'm like, no, they do not.
No,
I didn't
they
do any
don't.
of this in high school. So
No,
I
and it
was
should be
just
normal that
confused.
those things are not a part of high school because they've never been
Exactly.
supposed to be, and they're not. Those are, and I'm not even saying people shouldn't do those things. That's a completely different topic.
Right.
I don't think
But in
it's
high school.
Yeah, I don't think it's high school healthy content. Like it's not a high school healthy choices to make. That's really upsetting. I didn't know that, but now I'm like genuinely anti.
Well, and so it's weird. So I'm like,
Saga.
okay, was the purpose of this show to be like for the girls that had watched it when they were like 10 and they're like, oh, now they're adults, they want something like that's familiar but different, but like older. But the problem with that is that so much of the rest of the show is like tweeny. There's teenage drama going on, like really strong Disney Channel teenage drama going on. And some of the plot points are just weird. And some of the decisions that the teenagers are making, I'm like, you cannot argue that this person is mature enough to decide that they should be on drugs, but they're making these decisions. And I'm just, who is this for? Because I wouldn't show this to a teenager. For me, I wouldn't. I'm sure some people would, but like, the one that really gets me is the underage drinking, because regardless of your morals, that's actively illegal. And I'm so confused. That's true too. Although in this world, like it takes place in other world, right? So it's not America. And I'm like, I still feel like you shouldn't be encouraging this kind of stuff in 16-year-olds who live in places where that's illegal.
I'm confused because even if the intent was to create this for the women who really liked it when they were kids, the characters in the cartoon were probably 16. So it's not like they aged them up. Right. So when we were kids watching them as 16-year-olds, as a grown-up, I don't want to still be watching them as 16-year-olds. Now, if you wanted to make them like in college, some college kids, that would have been different. I guess that would have been acceptable, especially for our age range. It would still just be a little bit younger than us. But I was like a 12-year-old looking up to the 16-year-old Winx characters thinking, wow, they're so cool. I can't wait to be in high school. I'm not like 25 being like, you know what? I want some high school drama right now. That's what I want. I want to see what are the high schools up to. I don't, maybe that's just me. I don't know. That does not sound appealing. I think that the execution could have been better.
Yes, that's really weird. I'm like, you should have just committed to one. Commit to the tween, commit to the adult, and it would have been great. And it wasn't terrible. Like the magic was fun and the music was good and all that kind of stuff. But I just feel like they should have committed more. And it also brings up a small issue that I'm going to try not to rant about in YA, where I feel like people need to pick a team are teenagers mature enough to be making decisions with the full range of consequences, or are they reckless and cannot be trusted? Because I really don't think you can have both. I mean, you can. There is a middle ground, but teenagers in YA will like make really bad decisions, and people will point out like, oh my gosh, that's so annoying. Who would do that? And then the author or the show creator is always like, well, they're teenagers, as an explanation. But like, I wasn't making those kinds of decisions as a teenager.
No.
And if I don't know, if you're that reckless and if you're making that bad of decisions, maybe you're not mature enough to be doing the other stuff that people seem to think that teenagers can do. So
I mean, I'm inclined to agree. Yeah. I've been told that, oh no, it's just that most people weren't like you in high school. And I'm like, there's just no way. Because I know a lot of people that were more on my end of that spectrum than not. So like, there's no way that we're all just complete and total outliers. There's no way. So I think I can't imagine like we are. That. And it's like media perpetuated, I think, largely that teenagers are ready and or engaging in all of that stuff. But the problem is the more that media pushes that message, the more teenagers watching it is like, well, I guess that's what we're allowed to be doing /
Mhm.
we're supposed to be doing now. And
Right.
I think it's actually quite harmful.
I
So
do. I think that's why teenagers are so confused all the time. They're like,
yeah.
well, I'm an adult, but also I have all of these childlike emotions and like I don't feel mature enough to do this, but people are telling me I am. So what do I do? And I'm like, I would be confused too, hon. That's not
Yeah.
your fault.
Yeah, exactly. You're in a very important
So,
stage of development. Just go with what your gut tells you to do. Like, you will sometimes be wrong, but that's the stuff it's typically okay to
mhm.
be wrong about as a teenager. If you're
Yeah.
doing something because you feel pressured to, because you think that that's what you're supposed to do at your age,
Mhm.
chances are you're not, and ignore that.
Yeah.
Not, I don't know if we have any teenage listeners, but if we
Yeah.
do, that's my 2 cents to you.
Mhm.
And if people are going to call you lame later, guess what? Those people's opinions do not matter anyways.
True.
So
You're not lame. You're just
yeah.
they need to feel like you are to justify what they're doing is
Yeah.
kind of how I think it goes. But
Yes. Weird.
um
It's so weird how
yeah.
that has been an always existing problem.
Yeah.
All the cool kids are doing it has
Yeah.
always been the excuse. And now just media
Mhm.
pushes it more than they ever did before.
And it's so weird because if all the cool kids are doing it, why do you need me to do it? Like, let me
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. You're like, enough people
So,
are doing it. I don't need to be part of that. That's fine.
mhm.
Remember, individuality is cool, kids.
Yeah.
It actually is, though. Just everyone's so busy
Yeah.
trying to be individual in the same way.
Hmm.
It's so, I understand. There's just a lot of fallacies going on there. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So anyway, as a writer of YA, right, that I do write YA and I would like to be an author. It's like I feel like I'm a little more in touch with teenagers than like other people my age, but
Mhm.
obviously not like super in tune with them because I'm not. But I still remember because I was very cognizant of it at the time and as I got older, like
Yeah.
where I was maturity wise as a teenager. And people are different, but I don't know. I don't know where YA is going with this. And so
Yeah.
it's just strange that this show, it definitely felt like it was going to be more like young teenage because they're fairies. Okay.
Yes.
And and like FAIRIES, not like
Yes.
FAE, like the Fae, right? And so
No.
I'm like, where are
Even the
you
Winx
going with this?
cartoon, when I was a
Mhm.
child, if like a 12-year-old child seeing the Winx cartoon, I still kind of felt like they're kind of pushing this concept age-wise for
Mhm.
these characters. Like I'm enjoying it,
Yeah.
but I do feel like it's a little hokey that these are like 16-year-old like fairies at a fairy school. And the cartoon was very cheesy also. I
Yeah.
mean, I was 12, so I was all about
Yeah.
it. But even then I was like, we're kind of
Really?
I feel like these characters are aging out of their own story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I just don't know what the target audience was for that one. So
I don't think they
it
knew
made it
either.
2 seasons and then they canceled it. And I'm like, I'm not sure if I should be confused that it lasted 2 seasons or that like it didn't just go further if
It
they were going to
probably
lean into
lasted
it.
for 2 seasons on the fumes of nostalgia. There's got to
Yeah.
be the only explanation.
Yeah, that's fair. So
They
anyway,
should
if
have just
anyone
done
out there, what?
I was going to say they should have just taken the school for good and evil or the school of good and evil
I
approach because
know.
that was the perfect balance.
It was.
Yeah.
It was really good. So anyway, if anyone out there liked this show, I'm not trying to insult you. I'm just saying I was confused about what we were going for. So I don't know that I would
Same.
like super not recommend it. I just don't know that I would recommend it, It's just kind of
I haven't
strange.
seen it
But
and I wouldn't recommend it. So I can't give you like a I've seen it. I watched the
yeah.
trailer and I was like, absolutely not. I refuse.
I it was another one where I was like, I just want something in the background going on. And then I just got weirdly invested in all of the weird decisions people were making because people, again, in YA, this really, if you look at like the Hunger Games or anything by Marissa Meyer or like other like big YA kind of stories, these teenagers are not stupid. And I feel like sometimes when it goes to TV, they think that they can make them stupid. And
Mhm.
so like they're just making decisions and then they're getting really, really angry at something very understandable that someone else did. And then they're just like forgiving flippantly things like active murder. And I'm like, I feel like there are problems here. Like, why are you emotional about this but not that? So
That's hysterical. That was a very Carissa way to say that, but I
yeah.
agree.
It's just like these extremes where like this girl like almost kills one of the other characters and then that character is the one apologizing to her because she lost her ring as she was being like almost killed. I'm like, I feel like everyone is really off tune with what
We've
is the
lost the
actual
thread.
problem
We've
here.
we've
Yeah,
really lost the thread here.
we have. So anyway, that was my rant about
Oh, that's
YA and
funny.
TV. School for Good and Evil was a great balance. Winx was just too much of clashing age ranges coming into play, I think was the problem.
I agree.
So,
Take note of that, Hollywood.
yes.
At Hollywood again. Maybe
Yeah.
that is
Listen
Hollywood.
to
I don't
us.
know. Yeah, we know what we're talking about. I actually do think, like,
Obviously.
target audience wise, I do think that young adult authors should have some insight. The
Mhm.
ones who grew up also reading young adult and new adult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're in kind of this unique place too, like us. If you're in your 20s, like you grew up with YA as a genre as opposed to
Yeah.
like children's lit and then adult. And
Yeah.
so there probably is a lot of insight for people our age because we were both
Yeah.
teenagers when it existed and now are writing it as adults. So
Yeah. I think that we went from, it seems like now, and it makes me sad that there's kids and then there's like adult, like wannabe adults and then adults.
mm-hmm.
And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
that's a bummer because the teenage experience still definitely had its risks before, but it
It
wasn't,
was
it was
cool.
different. It was like its
Yeah.
own period of life, and the
Mm-hmm.
expectations were different and the choices
Yeah.
were different. And I think it was better then. Not to be like the past is always better because it's not always, but
In
I
a
think we've lost
sense.
some of that, and it's a huge bummer.
Yeah. So anyway, I did a lot of thinking about that this week.
Wow.
Is what I was doing.
Very
But
sobering.
yeah. What have you been doing, Ash?
I booked another cozy mystery ghostwriting gig, 6
Yep.
books. So that's what I've been doing. That's
Fun.
all I've been doing. I've been
Mm-hmm.
working and doing that. And basically, I can't say really much about it. I guess I could just say this for I'll talk about it in my writing update too. But basically, I can't say much about it because of the NDA that they make you sign when you do ghostwriting jobs, basically. But to meet my word count, the guy wanted me to turn in, was it 10,000 words a week? And that would have had me doing this for 6 months, basically. And I was like, I don't want to be doing this for 6 months because this is
Mm-hmm.
taking over my life and I don't particularly enjoy cozy mysteries. So I don't want to. And I'm not getting paid
Right.
that well to do it. I'm getting paid like kind of bottom of the barrel, not a lot more than a minimum wage if you break it down per hour.
Yeah.
So not ideal, but to make a little extra money while we're trying to build the house, I'll do it for a few months. So anyways, I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to like double that. So I'm writing 5,000 words a day, and I'm trying
Nice.
to finish a book every 2 weeks. And
Mm-hmm.
we'll see what happens because I'm on track
Ah,
so far. But that's pretty much been it. And I know that there's stuff I need to do around the farm. But that's the other thing too, is I'm like, if I don't get this out of the way in the next 3 months, then it's going to be dragging on into when I really have a lot of chores to do outside. And I can't
yeah.
do that. So I'm trying to get it out of the way ASAP. And I also don't want it to take over my weekends. I want to
Mm-hmm.
have my weekends. They're for
Yeah.
D&D and church and
Yeah.
D&D. So I that's the thing too, is I'm like, if I write 5,000 words a day, I definitely don't have to let it like dip into my weekend. So
Mm-hmm.
that's exciting. And also we signed up for this like travel plan thing last year sometime, and we've been paying into it long enough that we finally got the deals that they offered us, that they gave us when we like actually started it. And it
Mm-hmm.
means that we get to go on like a 5-night cruise, and we get to go on like a 2-day trip to Honolulu, and it's completely
Cool.
paid for. Like the hotels are completely paid for and the airfare. So I'm so
Cool.
freaking excited. So
That's
Javi comes
awesome.
home tomorrow, and then we can like figure out when we're gonna do it. And I just have to send in like the
Mm-hmm.
little voucher. And I'm so thrilled. I've never been on a cruise. I've never been to Honolulu.
Yeah.
So I'm just very, very excited about that. But that's
Nice.
pretty much been my week. Nothing terribly exciting has happened.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Also, because I keep forgetting to talk about it, I also feel like I really nailed D&D this week.
You
Um,
totally destroyed it. I was so freaking proud.
it was awesome. We started out with this battle with these like they're essentially giant leeches, right,
Yeah,
on
they're
the ocean.
disgusting.
And we were like failing so hard. And they're not even that
So
hard to
funny.
beat, but we kept rolling so low. Everyone's like, okay, next roll. And it's like a 4. And we're like, okay. And Ash is like, the cannon swept right past the leech and did
It
not land.
skipped a pass across the water like
Yeah,
a harmless stone 3 freaking times in a row. I
I
was like,
know.
how? I was like even trying to make it really easy for y'all. I was like, okay,
Uh-huh.
add 5 to your hit roll for the cannon.
Then
5
roll a
to the
2.
hit roll. Yes. I was like, what is happening?
Oh my
Y'all spent
gosh.
hours fighting the piercers. If you guys
It
know D&D, it
was
was the
insane.
piercers, but modified.
Yes.
So
It,
yeah.
it was just, I don't even, we were just rolling bad. And we were like actively hurting each other instead of the monsters. Like that's how bad it was going. And I don't know. By the time we finished that, we were like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? So then we went to this island and there was La Serena,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like this siren mermaid creepy thing. And I just rolled high enough for perception that I found her first. And then me and the other female in the group went to talk to her because she hates men. And we're just like having this discussion. And I'm like, perceive for more information. And I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna just like sympathize with her. We're not gonna kill her because we wanted her treasure. And I'm like, what happens to the treasure? How do we find it if she's dead? That was the full extent of my logic. And we went through this whole conversation where I'm like my character's like rolling up sleeves to show that I've been held captive before, and then we're creating a sympathy bond. And then I like told one of the other players to attack her so that I could save her, to emotionally manipulate her.
Yeah.
And then I just, after a while, I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna give her a hug. How about I give her a hug? And you're like describing the scene. I'm like, she's gonna kill me. She's gonna rip my head off when I hug her. And then it's like, and then she turned into a human, and like, it's not a curse, but like basically the curse was broken. And I'm like, oh my gosh, sweet.
I so did not think anyone was gonna get it, because this is a very dangerous creature too. One of our characters was a monster hunter. That's his backstory. So he was just like raring to go, like to fight them. And she was really strong too. And the quest would have continued whether you guys killed her or not. But I was like, I really hope that they tried not to kill her, because I think you get a lot more of this backstory that I've worked on in my brain, which was, I thought, pretty fun. But I was like, how am I going to get them to hug her without in any way indicating that this is a creature that won't kill them, because it will. And the piercers almost killed two of them. Which was insane.
Yeah.
So I was so proud. It was great. Proud.
I think we just might be like on the same wavelength, right? I was like, you know what would fix this? A hug. And Ash is like creating this creature. She's like, a hug will fix it all.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was the storyteller in both of us. I think that's why you do so well with D&D too, because like if you're like, I can't reach the creature with, you know, my weapons or whatever, I wonder what else is in the environment. And you will come up with stuff, which, by the way, if you guys haven't played D&D before, you can do that. You can literally just say, is there anything in my environment? Oh, there's a cannon. Can I shoot it? And usually the DM, if they're chill, will be like, well, sure. Yeah. Let me look up what the stats would be for that. Or let me come up with some reasonable stats. And so anyways, and so you do that kind of shit. And so then when you do like roll high and you're already doing that, like you just destroy, and it's awesome.
It was awesome. I felt so good about myself. Afterwards, I was like, I just defeated a monster by essentially saving the monster. And now she's coming with us, and she's my new best friend.
Yeah, so. She's like, she's your new bestie. And then even though she doesn't know the character, but even though you did tell one of your party members to shoot her, she gave you one of her scales worth like 300 GP or something crazy. So, because she doesn't know you're the one who did that.
Yeah, we're never going to tell her that. But
maybe
otherwise,
not a good idea. Yeah.
Anyway, it was great. So and I was really like, the backstory was really cool too. So it was a lot of fun.
I thought about it a little bit. My mom was like, oh, is this from the book you write? And I was like, very loosely inspired. It's not the same character, the same story, but it is, there were some themes in it. I will be honest, none of that did I have planned for the campaign. I was going to make you guys go straight to the next destination to get on with the quest. And then I thought, no, they need a different side quest first, because the last session we had was just all like going to shops basically. And I was like, that was so boring. We're going to make this like a really hard, like they're going to have a big monster battle. They're going to have a bunch of story that's interesting, even if it's not to do with that like quest that they're on right now. And I made it all up on the spot. So I am so glad that it worked out.
It was awesome. So I was living it up for D&D this week.
Yeah. Jinxie Twitch Peppermint was really in her
she was
prime.
Doing great. Yeah. That's my character name. And everyone calls me Twitch. So
yeah. Her friends call her Twitch, except for the La Sirena, whose name is Arabella, actually can call you, I think you said she can call you Jinxie.
That's right. She can use my real name because we're friends.
Yeah, because y'all are besties, even though you did tell Fjord to shoot her.
I did, but we're past that. We've grown.
Also, by the way, because his character is a monster hunter, and I was like, they were like, the whole time y'all kept being like, maybe there's a way to break the curse. Maybe she's cursed. And I kept trying to be like, it's not a curse. It's not a curse. Right. None of the curse breaking stuff is going to help you here. This is not a curse. And so I guess I gave Dom, my brother-in-law, who plays the monster hunter, I gave him such an existential crisis about that he had a migraine for like hours after we left. Oh, no. Because he was like, this is just like really wrecking my worldview right now. Because it's not black or white, it's gray. Because I was like, no, he's like, she's the monster. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, but she's not. And I'm like, that's correct. He's
Right.
like, but, and she's not cursed. And I'm like, that is correct. He's like, but,
Right.
and she might hurt someone again. And I was like, maybe.
Maybe, but she doesn't want to, but
She
maybe.
doesn't want to, but maybe. I mean, last time it was pretty brutal. Like the reason that she kind of went like scary monster and the monster took over. Anyway, so I was really also proud of myself that I gave a man an existential crisis. Both his character and himself in real life. I was very pleased. I felt successful.
Good job.
Yeah. I was like, that's good storytelling right there.
That's what we're going for.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, on to the thing that you guys showed up for. I forgot to tell you guys there are skip notes if you guys don't want to listen to our chat. You can always use those in the episode description below. That won't help you now, but maybe it'll help you next time if you decide to come back. Like all the cool kids are going to. So do you have any book recs?
I don't, because I was watching the School for Good and Evil.
So you had movies.
Yeah,
you had movie recs.
Yeah.
That's funny. I'm looking over at my shelf and I'm like, do I have any book recs? No, I can tell you what I'm reading right now. Okay. And I think the world will pretty confidently recommend it to everybody. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou.
Oh, okay.
That is,
yeah.
Angelou,
yeah.
I thought, but yeah.
Angelou. I don't know.
Anyways, I don't know. But that's what we're reading. We're reading it for our sister podcast, That Pretentious Book Club. So that's going to come out Monday, I think. Monday by the time that this comes out. So, I mean, I feel confident saying it's a good book because all of history and society tells me it's a good book. And I don't usually, agree with society, but I feel confident on this one.
Yeah.
So I'm reading it. I don't have any personal opinions on it yet because I'm only like a chapter in, but I will share my opinions when I have them. Fun fact, the audiobook, if you buy it, I didn't because I'm poor, but the audiobook that you get that you can buy actually is narrated by Maya, which is very cool.
Why did I think she was dead?
I did too. So
is this like a Nelson Mandela thing? Like
maybe it is. I don't know.
Mandela effect strikes again. I don't know. Well, I'm very glad to hear she's assumingly alive. So
I know now good. I gotta check. I'm like, well, I don't know when they recorded the audiobook.
That's true. It could be old. Although audiobooks are kind of new, and I thought she had been dead for a while, so I'm wrong either way.
No, yeah, she did. She passed away in 2014. We're not crazy.
Okay, good. Well, good that we're not crazy, but sad that she died in 2014. When did they record the audiobook?
I don't know.
Maybe my perception of when audiobooks became a thing is wrong.
I know. I'm like, wasn't it only like 3 years ago?
Yeah.
2020.
But I guess good that she got to do that first.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yay. I mean, unless it was a different narrator also named Maya Angelou.
That would be insane.
Did cross my mind. But anyways, regardless, I listened to the sample and it was very good. They had like the aesthetic music and everything. I was just too poor to buy it, so I just listened to the sample and I'm reading it. But that's my pseudo book rec. What's our word of the week?
Our word of the week is internecine. I think that's how you say it. Internecine. Internecine, and it means destructive to both sides in a conflict. So like an internecine battle would be both sides take really heavy hits.
Internecine battle.
Yeah, like a politics. Third party maybe. Yeah. Politics is a good example.
Or internecine.
Maybe there's like an internecine third party in like a conflict that affects them both or whatever. But my brain is going war, but of course it can be just a normal
destruction is internecine.
Yeah, very true.
It's internecine. The Cold War is really internecine.
I was just about to say you used it correctly and then you pulled that.
I know, I didn't like it. I heard myself use it probably correctly a couple times and every time I was like, ooh, I don't like the way that feels. I gotta find a way to mess it up.
Nice.
Also, I feel really posh on a different note because this is actually just my headband that has flowers on it, but it looks like I'm wearing a scarf.
It looks very nice.
Thank you. It's not a scarf. Do you remember when scarves were like insanely popular?
Yes, and I never wore them because I don't like things touching my neck.
I forgot that about you. I never wore them because I thought they looked stupid. Because they were in style, and I hate things that are trendy when they're trendy for the sake of that. Because I'm a quote unquote individual. You know?
Yeah,
and
sounds like something Ash would do.
I know. And now that they're not cool at all, I'm like, wait a minute, do I like scarves? Do I like this?
I missed an opportunity. Could I have been cool back then?
Does my neck rock a scarf?
Oh my gosh.
Anyways, I guess we can get into our theme now. So we are going to talk about filler and crutch words, which is Carissa's episode recommendation. I feel
Yes.
confident in saying, and she's going to explain it to you because I'm mostly here to learn this episode, at least
Cool.
to figure out what we're talking about, because
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what she's referring
Okay.
to, but I know it's important.
I mean, I guess there are multiple definitions available here, but what I mean by filler words is things such as just or very or actually, or the kind of things that like clutter up your prose that you probably use in speech a lot but don't need to be written. Really, they don't need to be used in speech either, but this is my theory. I think people use filler words like 99% of the time because they're trying to catch up their thoughts like to their mouth, right? Like they're trying to stall so that they can think of what they actually want to say next. Like I just used actually. So that's what I think people do. Is also one of them, which I use a lot. Like is one of them.
I use that one constantly.
I'm now trying not to use and realizing I use it a lot. But
alternate proposal. I think there are two reasons. I do think that that's one of the reasons, because now I'm on board. Now I know what you're talking about. Yes. And I could have asked her before the episode started, but where would be the fun in that?
More fun this way.
To make it seem like I knew what we were talking about. I'm never going to be that fake with you guys. I never know what we're talking about. I wait for honesty to explain it to me. Exactly. Honesty first. I think that, yes, people use filler words when their mouth is trying to catch up to their brain, but also I think when they're trying to see, right now my mouth is trying to catch up to my brain, and I was like, don't say right. I think what they're trying to soften what they're saying to some degree, especially with the words just. Occasionally, verbal hedging. Like, yes, hedging. I hate it. I hate it. Yeah. Occasionally it can be good if you're making your character do it on purpose because you want your character to seem like they're verbally hedging. But for the most part, using a lot of these words like just and actually, especially the word just, but there's some other ones too, it almost always detracts meaning from what your character is saying. So use it extraordinarily sparingly.
Yes.
So just that one bugs me. I think I give that note to authors all the time when I'm editing. I'm like, take out the just. You don't need it.
Yeah, for sure.
You just don't need it.
Just don't need it. That one actually works pretty well. So yeah, we'll go into that a little more, but we're also going to talk about crutch words because I just feel like they go together in an episode. And a crutch word is just a word that you as an author tend to use a lot. It's not suddenly a bad word, but yes, Ash's is suddenly. And how I think those kind of become filler words when you start writing enough. So
suddenly anyway. Ash just realized that Karissa was actually correct.
There you go. But and that's actually a good example because the point of that sentence is really, really watered down by the time you get to the end.
Yeah.
So a lot of writing is figuring out how to pick your word choice and pack as much punch as possible into your sentences. And sometimes words like very or just can contribute. So like in dialogue, if you are trying to indicate that a character is uncertain or not very confident in their personality or something like that, then filler words like that can really be useful because they're indicating something that we all can kind of relate to. I think most of us use at least some filler words. And again, not typically me. When you're less sure.
Perfection.
Well, everyone
my confidence is unmatched. Continue. Go. I don't really think about those two sentences to make sure I didn't use any of those words in
right. Like I can't undermine my own point here. Yeah. But we all kind of understand filler words, and so I think it creates almost an unconscious realization that character is maybe less confident or less certain than otherwise, especially if there are a lot of characters around them not using stuff like that. But I also think that it's important to consider it in your prose because I find that especially on first draft, I use a lot of filler words because when you're writing it, you're kind of just thinking it and then transcribing it as you write it. And so a lot of speech idiosyncrasies can come out in your first draft because you're not editing at that point. You're not taking out words. You're putting them there to begin with. Yeah. So I noticed that a lot of my first drafts, they don't use or that kind of stuff because that's not the kind of thing that you write a lot. Are those even considered words? Are they in the dictionary? They probably are, but they're not like real words. They don't have meaning. They are just filler words. Whereas something like very does have a definition and it does have meaning and it can be good sometimes. Yeah. But when you use them too much in your prose, you undermine the point you as the authorial voice are trying to make. And I don't know that this is like super groundbreaking. I think a lot of people know this, but if you want your writing to be stronger, you want to make sure that you're keeping an eye out for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I agree. My thing I always hit on is like, especially with the authors that I work with, is typically the more concise, the better. But
Mm-hmm.
maybe a better, more accurate way to say that is the more concise, the more impactful. So you can also play with that. And like we
Yeah.
say, use everything with intentionality, break the rules with intentionality when you're going to break the rules. Um, you can choose to use filler words more with one character than another, or more at one point in a character's
Mm-hmm.
speech than another. You just need to know when you're doing it, while you're doing it, and you need to compare the effect. Because I've also had authors who were very, very new to writing and they used no filler words. They just went the complete opposite direction and it felt
Mm-hmm.
so stilted. It felt
Yeah.
so unrealistic. Also, the characters in the specific example I'm thinking of were children.
Mm.
Children use a
They
lot
should
of
hedge
filler
more.
words. They should
Yes.
hedge a lot. And these were children who did not hedge ever. So they just kind of
Creepy.
sounded like dicks, to be honest. They were
Oh
just kind of
yeah.
assholes because
Mm-hmm.
that can also happen because sometimes we hedge because we want to be nicer. So instead of being like,
Yep.
hey, get your bag out of my way, we'd say, hey, would you mind? Could you move your bag? All right, because that's
Mm-hmm.
just nicer. And so you have
Right.
to remember too that if you go absolutely no filler words, absolutely no hedging, your character is going to sound a bit like a dick occasionally.
Yeah.
It depends on the situation, or they could just sound really strong if they're like preparing for battle. You don't, you
Mm-hmm.
definitely don't want someone who's in charge of anything battle related to be hedging about anything.
True.
But children should hedge. If a character is uncertain, they can hedge. That's up to the character. Or I guess they could fake being really confident.
Mm-hmm.
And a no character 100% doesn't ever use filler words, or 100% does use filler words. So
Right.
there is a balance
A
of them.
combination.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you want to do a combination. I always say lean for less than more, because
Mm-hmm.
then it makes it more impactful that you've used
Yeah.
that, if that makes sense also. But yeah, I mean that's my general thought on it.
Yeah. Because I think too, especially if you're kind of a new writer or you're starting out, there is a difference between the art of verbal storytelling and the art of written storytelling.
Oh yeah.
And the skill set is very different because you do, when you're verbally speaking to people, first of all, you have hand motions and you can make eye contact and all that kind of stuff. And you have tone of voice and inflection and all of that playing into it, which is
Yep.
kind of, it takes the place of punctuation or paragraph structure in writing. But when you are writing it out, you do eliminate certain things that like in the prose in particular, that in speech would be necessary because you are trying to hedge and connect with people, but in writing you want to take it out because you're trying to get to the point maybe a little faster or sound a
Yeah.
little smarter. Maybe not that oral storytelling is like a dumb thing to do, but
No.
typically there's just more hedging allowed and all of that.
Yeah.
In writing you do want it to be coherent and you can't start a sentence over, right? You
No.
you edit the sentence, you don't have a sentence stop
Yeah.
and then start again like you do
Yeah.
when you speak. And so the ratio of filler words in writing versus oral storytelling is going to be very different, significantly less if you're writing it down.
I agree.
And so, but of course, most of us speak more than we write, unless you're, insane about it, like I often
To say,
am.
I don't know. I don't
Um,
know. Maybe I don't know that you do, but
most people probably speak more than they write, and so you develop these habits and it feels weird to not put them into your writing. But if you read books, whether it's YA or children's or adults, whatever genre, you're going to notice that they don't use those as much. So
yeah.
I think a good example is when I think we do this on the podcast a lot, or at least I do, especially in my everyday speech, is I will phrase things as I just think that, and then I'll say what I think. Whereas
Yeah.
really I could just say I think that, or I could just say the
Just
thing.
say the thought. Yeah.
I don't have to qualify that it's a thought I have,
Yeah.
because obviously if I'm saying it, it's a thought I have.
Yeah.
But like
You
you were
also use it
saying,
as a transition sometimes, like in
yes,
speech. Yeah.
true. But also like you were saying, you do it sometimes to be nicer. Like if you're about to state a really strong opinion, you will say something like, I just think that, so that it doesn't sound like you're being overbearing in
Yes.
conversations. And
Yes.
this is actually also, they've done studies on it that women hedge more in their speech
Yes,
than
we
men
do.
because
And
we want to make people feel more comfortable with the things we're
yes.
saying.
And sidebar that's somewhat related, but not completely related. Every time I see those kind of stats that say women are more diplomatic, women tend to hedge more, it's always with the tone of women need to not. And you know what?
Right.
I would like to
I
take
think
the
men need to
opposite
start.
stance. I agree. Because you know why we do it? Because it's nice. That's
Exactly.
why, because it's nice.
Oh
Okay,
my
I don't want
gosh.
to stop.
90% of the time, people are like, women should be more like men. I'm like, I feel like maybe men should take on the typically female stance here.
Yes, I agree. And I think that that would be the more like gender quote unquote aware thing to do
Yeah.
anyways. It's
I mean,
so people are like,
sometimes,
why is
but
sexism still a problem? And I'm like, maybe because we're still just trying to like be more like men and then shame them
mhm,
and try and say that we're better at being manly than they are because they're doing it
right.
wrong. And I'm like, or we could just say maybe women have some natural strengths on the whole
Yeah.
that men should maybe take a look at.
Yeah. Maybe we can learn from each other. Maybe there's like an
Maybe we both have
equal
purposes and
problem and
maybe there's no
strength
strict
here.
rules for either one of us and we can all be good at different stuff, maybe.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's
Anyway,
insane. Different podcasts, but yeah,
yeah,
bananas.
right.
It's
So
important to diplomacy. There, I'll say that. I do think
it's
it is.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you are a woman, I think you probably need to be more, maybe just a little more careful about this than
Mhm.
men. Men, you're gonna be verbally hedging too, and so it's probably coming out in your writing as well. But
But you
particularly if
tend
you're a
to be more
woman,
balanced. Yeah.
yes. If you're writing in prose in particular and you're not using filler words, like Ash said, some are good some places. You want to sound like a human, not a robot. But it is going
Yes.
to feel very robotic for a while as you're first starting to write because you write differently than you speak. The style is just different. So it's
Yeah.
going to feel very unnatural, I think, to not hedge.
Yep.
Because I remember when I first started to write and I'd heard this advice, people were like, take out just, take out very, take out definitely. And I'm
Yeah.
like, no, this is like the voice of the character. This is my narrative voice. And, fast forward 5 years and I'm like, yeah, they were right. It's definitely stronger if I take these out.
Yeah.
And part of that is just you get attached to certain word choices. So if you edit a sentence 10 times and the definitely is still in there, it feels strange without it. But if you come back
Yeah.
after a while when it's not there, it's going to feel totally
It'll
normal.
be fine. Yeah.
So I would suggest with filler words, take them out, just kind of take them all out, and then do an edit and see if it sounds super strange.
Yeah. I agree. Or
To
have someone else look at it. I think
Yeah.
it's the
Do you
Mark
think I
Twain
need
quote.
this here?
Yeah, I think that I
Mhm.
want to say it's a Mark Twain quote. I might misquote it, but it's something to the effect of every time you don't know what to use, or every time you've put the word very in, because your editor will tell you to replace it typically, or whoever's reading it will go, you don't really need that, or they should be telling you that because you really almost never need that word. He
Mhm.
said, replace it with damn, and your editor will fix it every time, which is
Yes.
very funny. But the idea is, if you, like Chris is saying, if you just can't seem to see this sentence without that word, you're like, it just looks wrong. Have someone else look at it
Yeah.
because
Try it
they
without
don't
it.
have that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let them
Because
try it without.
it could very well be necessary to the sentence and the tone you're going for. But
Yeah.
it also might be that you're just really attached to your speaking style. And again, if you're a female writer out there, I think that you are going to feel like you're being too like overbearing in the way that you're writing if you state things rather than like this written equivalent of I just think that.
Yep.
And you like go for overbearing because it is your story. And I don't even mean that in like a girl power way. I just mean that when you're writing, you are essentially taking up the space and the time to say this is what I think about this, and that's implied, and people can decide if that's something they want to hear or not to hear. But you have started the conversation and you should kind of basically own it.
Yes.
And go all in. It's kind of like we were talking about with the Winx show. Like pick a side and then just really
Yep.
lean into
And
it.
just,
Don't try
yep.
to go halfway. If your character is uncertain and not very confident and you're trying to portray them as very shy, um, or the kind of person that's just so nice that they do kind of try to hedge constantly. Maybe it
Yeah.
does make it into your prose, especially in first person, but even maybe in third, if you're trying to give off that tone, and maybe you do want filler words in there. But if you're going for, I guess I'm going to say average characters or generally confident characters, they
Yeah.
really shouldn't be using those hedging phrases. And it's not actually mean. It's we have this cultural idea that it's mean. There's nothing inherently cruel
No.
about not using filler words or hedging.
No, I've
We just
noticed
have
this
this
about
social.
a lot of German people. I don't know if it's not if
Ah,
in their language it's not as common, but I've noticed a lot
mhm.
of people I've known in my life, and I've known weirdly a lot of German people who moved to the US. They don't use filler or
Yeah,
hedging at all. And
it's
they
just
can
not
sound
culturally
very
in them.
abrupt and aggressive to me.
Yeah.
I'm just pinpointing now that you said that. I think that's
Hmm.
why. Because
Yeah.
nothing they're saying is mean. But I've just always
Right.
been like, wow, they are so scary and aggressive. They just
Yeah.
don't use the filler words. They
They
just
just
say what
don't.
they mean, and that's it.
Mhm. And it's cultural. It's not like they don't actually respect the people in their lives. They just don't have that cultural aspect. So when you're writing, you kind of have to go into this with this concept of I'm not pulling punches, I'm saying what I think. And so you only use filler words if it is actually necessary to the portrayal of your characters. I'm going to say most of the time you don't want to use excessive ones. Again, like Ash said, sometimes you're going to want them because you don't want to sound robotic. You want to sound intelligent most of the time because, you're writing as opposed to speaking. You don't need to sound like an academic paper, but you don't want to sound like a first draft. And so you've got to find that middle ground based on what kind of story you're trying to tell. But don't feel like you do have to pull punches in terms of hedging your word choice, because you want your word choice to be as strong as possible. And this kind of goes back to also the idea of adverbs that most writers say, like, don't use adverbs.
Use a lot of adverbs. I shouldn't, but I do.
But it's like, don't say she walked quickly, say she ran or something like that. Now, walked quickly might be necessary if actively they are not running because they're trying to get somewhere without looking suspicious, and so you're saying they're walking but as fast as possible.
I would say she moved swiftly, but that's also still an adverb. It's just a less common one.
Exactly. Which there are a lot of ways to say it,
but
but in that situation, an adverb might work, it might not. It really depends on what you're going for. And I think you have to kind of treat filler words the way you treat adverbs. You have to be under the impression that like 90% of the time you shouldn't be using them, but when they are necessary, they're gonna pack a bigger punch probably if you're not using them too excessively. So if a character starts to hedge, I think subconsciously the reader is going to be like, oh wait, they were really confident before this, what's going on that suddenly they're not confident?
It's a tone shift every time a character goes from hedging to not hedging or back. The tone shifts, so just know that the tone is shifting when you do that. And if you didn't want a tone shift there, change it. That's I mean, I think that's the main thing to be aware of with when to use them or not.
And of course, if you're using, I assume this is in other programs too, but I use Word. You can just do a word search in the document to see like, okay, how many times did I use the word just? And if the number is something like 10, then that's really great.
That's good.
And you can probably
do like
keep
suddenly it'd be like 150
or 1,000.
And I'm like, wow, no thanks. I need to change that. Yeah, 1,000 is probably more because you've edited for me. You're like 1,000, Ash. 1,000.
I just like hyperbole. But yeah, so just do the search and see like what your number's at. If your number is like upwards of, I don't know, actually the average depends on how many words your document is. I would say though, if it's definitely 3 digits, you're going to want to go through and delete a lot of those. And a lot of times it's just deleting. Sometimes you want to replace the following words with stronger word choices. Sometimes that can just be an indicator that you were kind of like when you're speaking, you were trying to find your way to the sentence, but you were doing it as you went instead of actually having the thought formed. And so you might just have to change the phrasing or the sentence structure to make it fit better. So filler words, like you want to get them out of there most of the time, but they're also good indicators if you're editing that here's a place where we need more specificity. Here's a place where we need stronger word choice. And so they actually could be very useful markers, I think, when you're going back through your drafts to see like, okay, I need to double check this or potentially replace this. So I certainly don't think that you need to try not to use them in your first draft. I use them abundantly in my first drafts because I essentially feel like I'm speaking the story, and then I go through and kind of delete them afterwards or use them to note where I need to put a little more effort, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I think also kind of just to go back a little bit, I mean, I think you accidentally hit upon what it might be the best advice I've ever heard for writing a character of the opposite sex, because a lot of us struggle with that. If you guys don't, congratulations, that's amazing. I struggle with it. I know a lot of writers struggle with it. So I have a hard time writing men that are really deep because I don't want to do them wrong. You know, like I don't want to do a bad job. So then I just look kind of like not do much at all.
Not trying hard at all.
Yeah, exactly. But especially in regard to how your male characters speak. Yes. Even just the idea of going through and taking out the hedging or taking out like 80% or 90% of the hedging for your male characters or picking a different percentage for your different male characters. So there's some, you know, it's all mixed up a little bit. I think that's a great way to try and get a more authentic sound. And yes, it's not a rule. It's just a generality that we're talking about. But that generality will come through as more authentic than you not doing it at all if you're someone who struggles with that. So that might be, I mean, I know that wasn't the point at all. We could do a whole other episode on how to write a character of the opposite gender. We probably should because I need help with that.
Yeah.
But that is just such a great piece of advice. Like I wrote it down and I wrote like 3 other things about it because I was like, oh my God, the code is cracked.
We figured it out, everyone.
Now we understand men.
Yeah.
LOL, no.
It also could, now that you say that, it also could be a good way if you have some kind of character whose identity is kind of obscured and you don't know what the gender is, the way that they speak can be a good indicator, as in foreshadowing for that. So like if you have a villain and everyone kind of assumes it's a male villain, but then they're kind of short and like they use some verbal hedging when they speak, maybe those are clues that it's actually a woman, or vice versa, or whatever.
Yeah, that's great for mistaken identity, or for someone who's having a lot of personal conflict and doesn't really know how they identify, like someone who may be more effeminate, naturally a character, but they really want to be seen as like very typically masculine. Maybe they go back and forth a lot because maybe they're 90% of the time
the thread,
they are exactly, maybe 90% of the time they're like no hedging, really tough, meh. And then 10% of the time they hedge like crazy for that 10% of the time, and that like flip back and forth is an expression of an inner conflict that's going on with that character. And you could change the percentages and do that with men, do it with women, to express some kind of different internal struggle going on. Typically that would be the kind of like they're not at peace with their identity, or they don't really know who they are or understand themselves very well. But that's a great way to express that. I didn't ever think until now about how the way that we speak says so much about how we think about ourselves and how we think about ourselves in relation to the people around us as well. And it's true for your characters too.
Yeah. I do think that, and again, slight tangent here, but I think sometimes when it comes to the differences between the genders, people spend way too much time trying to say, well, we're all really the same, instead of saying, well, here are some things that are different about us that we can use to like indicate the strengths and weaknesses of both.
Yeah.
And so like if you know, you might not like that women verbally hedge more than men, but like it is a reality, and whatever causes it, that's just the reality. So use it to better emphasize who your characters are.
Yeah, and to tell your story more authentically. Denying that a generality exists is just it's not being authentic to the world or to the people that you're telling the story to. So let's all accept the generalities. We are saying right now it's a generality. It's not true for every single character. Or every single person, but just know as a generality, this tends to be the case, and use that to your advantage as an authentic storyteller. So you're creating people that people can relate to. And if what you want to bring to light is that some generality that people have accepted is not accurate, use the generalities that are generally accurate to express that, to highlight that. I agree. I do think that there's a weird focus on we're all the same instead of being like we're all different in like the best ways, because if we were all the same, we'd be missing a whole lot. And who's going to decide who has like the best way to be the same? What if the way that they're the same is the way that we should all be the best? Or what if the way that that other person is the same, maybe we should all be like that? You know, that's just, it's way too limiting. It's dumb. Practically it's dumb. So
it is.
Sorry if I've
It's a
offended
bad
anyone,
system,
but it's a very bad system.
Yeah, I don't think it's great. I think you should lean into the things that make people different, especially from a writing perspective. I do think this is a human thing, but also from a writing perspective, like your characters are going to be so much richer if they are different from other characters in the book.
I mean, if they're individuals, because individuals read your books, crazy. Your readers are individuals, you guys. Did you know?
What?
Bananas. I'm not trying to talk down to you guys. I'm talking down to some of the like famous authors that I'm like, looking at you. This is not to our writers. I'm sure you guys have never made a mistake.
You guys are great.
You're perfect. You're angels. We know.
Absolutely. But yeah, so that is a good point, that you can use like the degree of verbal hedging to write your male versus female characters more believably. And again,
to indicate internal struggle with your identity. Which
is
something everybody feels. Or maybe there's like one character in your character's life that just throws them out of balance and just makes them feel really not confident. And so with that character specifically, they hedge a lot more. The book that I'm working on getting published right now, that I have a partial out to an agent to, this main character, I was thinking in generalities about her. And I was like, she's not very confident. And then when I read back through to the edit of the rewrite, I thought, actually, she's shockingly confident. It's just with one character that she's not. She hedges a lot, and it's because this person's been a dick to her entire life. And so she has no confidence in front of that person or about that person. But otherwise, she's very confident. And I actually think it says a lot about their relationship without me having to explicitly tell readers about their relationship, that's how she reacts to him. So the way that your character reacts to another character, using hedging or not hedging, also says a lot.
Yep.
And if you don't like zero hedging at all, because it can sound kind of aggressive, depending on the tone, maybe that's a character that they have no patience for.
Yep.
You know, because
Maybe
people
that's
that
on
you like,
purpose.
even if you're comfortable with them, you tend to hedge a little bit. I mean, if you're a woman, maybe this is more of what we do. Typically, you hedge a little more because you like them. You might hedge a lot with someone you're trying to keep calm because you don't trust them. Someone you're done with, no patience for, no more hedging. All done.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm just gonna say what I think and move on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh no.
Sorry, I interrupted you like 3
No,
times.
you're good. I had a follow-up, but I think I forgot it. But it's I remember. Okay. And so also on your point about like how someone might change how much they verbally hedge. Also you're talking a lot about dialogue, which is super true and fair. But like in the prose also, the paragraphs kind of surrounding the dialogue interactions between two characters who are more confident together or less confident together, it can also bleed into that if you want to go like really deep, to indicate like to the reader that, especially if you're doing like a first person or like a very close third person kind of narration, it should kind of seep into the prose a little bit so that the dialogue doesn't feel contrary to the voice that you're hearing in the prose. So
yeah, I'm not amazing at that. I'm a dialogue girl. I've always been. Yeah, so that's harder for me.
Yeah, but I mean, you need both, right? You have to have dialogue and prose.
Yeah.
So...
Our strength is in our individuality.
Yeah. And speaking of individuality, that's a good segue. Let's talk about crutch words, because crutch words are, did I already say this? They are like the words that you in particular as an author kind of lean on. That they do have meaning. They're not filler. They have meaning. They are useful in the ways in which they are used, but maybe like per page you're using them too much, or per chapter, or per book even. And it's okay to have certain crutch words. If you use them, you know, more often than someone else, that's just a style choice, and that's part of your voice as a writer.
As long as you know you're doing it and you're doing it on purpose.
But I do think, and I can't even really gauge the ratio because I'm not a math person, but I do think that per page you want to have different words. Like I would argue, for me, smirked and smiled are big crutch words, and I assume a lot of people out there agree with this, because it's so, I don't like the word laughed also. I don't like the word chuckled, and I don't like a lot of synonyms for laughed, so I end up using laugh a lot.
They're all bad. We need new ones. Let's make some new words. I hate all the laugh synonyms.
With smiled, grinned is there, but grinned always feels a little bit like eerie or like like cocky or something. Like you're mocking someone a little bit, so it doesn't quite get it across unless it's a teasing conversation.
Malicious,
and then with smirked, it's always like sneered. And whenever I look at the synonyms for smirked, I'm like, do I know what smirked means? Because none of these are getting it across, but they're not exact synonyms, right? And so I tend to lean on those a lot because, like, I don't know, for whatever reason, whatever is going on with the mouth of my main character is something that I tend to focus on a lot in terms of like the dialogue, not dialogue tags.
Speech tags,
in the speech tags, because I just feel like that's a simple, easy way to indicate how their tone is without saying like using an adverb, like saying I was like, I don't have this
problem. It's because I use too many adverbs, so I don't have that problem. I should probably do
the reverse problem. But I tend to try that per page I don't use the word smiled more than twice, or the word smirked more than twice. Because that ratio just seems more natural to me. And I will, again, on first draft, I use them all over the place. Then I either have to change the structure of what's going on, or like they just don't smile as often, because sometimes they smile like every other dialogue tag and you're like, okay, I guess they're just continually smiling, so I only need to state it when it starts or when it becomes like noticeable by the other character or whatever. But those tend to be crutch words for me, and so kind of figuring out like where my ratio is really helpful, so that I can do a search for them. And I can literally, like, if you do a search in Word, it will highlight everything. And if you just look at the page, you can see how many times it's highlighted on that page.
I try and use suddenly no more than twice a chapter. You can also, I think when you go in and you look at those and you're like, well, okay, how do I replace that word, my crutch word then? Because I still have to have something there. I think finding a way to describe what happens in response to that crutch word, if it would have been there, I think that that's a great place to start. So like, instead of like, if you've already used smile like 2 times on the page, instead of saying smile again, maybe you say their eyes met and his expression became amused, like a mirror of her own. Ha, you've implied that she's amused. She's probably smiling.
Yes.
Instead of suddenly, I drop in an onomatopoeia sometimes instead in all caps. I'm like, bam, and everybody jumped. We know it happened suddenly because everyone jumped. I didn't have to say suddenly. So I'm trying to do that more often. So I think about the intent of the crutch word and then how else you can communicate that intent that is not just the crutch word.
Exactly. Because I do think the instinct is, when you realize you have a crutch word, is to find a synonym. And that's not always the best way. Sometimes you need to restructure that paragraph or sentence or whatever so that you don't need it at all. And like with suddenly, and with a lot of other words like suddenly, sometimes you can just eliminate them. And like you said, focus on the reaction and the kind of
often. Yeah. Ever since you pointed that out to me, I'm like, do I need to use the word suddenly?
Ever? Yeah. Is it ever necessary?
Almost
and like, of course it can be sometimes, just like filler words, but if you're using it constantly, really at that point, you're kind of saying like, I'm not sure that I'm communicating this well enough. So I'm kind of leaning on this idea enough. So like, Ash, you're like, I want action. I want people to know that it's happening suddenly and fast. And so you're kind of leaning into it almost maybe too much. And then with me, with the grinned and smiled and all this kind of stuff, I want people to know that they're happy. I want to know people to know what their expressions are like. But you do have to at some point trust that readers are going to figure it out, that they're smart, and that if you say smiled, they're still picturing them as smiling. And that you can use, like you said, you can say that they were amused, or you could say something about how their eyes lit up, or, you know, various other ways to indicate that they are happy or teasing or something like that, rather than necessarily finding a bunch of synonyms for smiled. It would be nice if there were more.
Their cheeks felt warm, but it wasn't a bad feeling. There are so many ways, and obviously they come up to mind for me because I don't think that one's my problem as much. Suddenly is hard, and what you said to me and you just touched on is sometimes you don't even need to find a replacement for your crutch word. You just need to take it out. And when I use suddenly too much, I would say 70 to 80% of the time when I take out suddenly, it doesn't, I don't need anything. I didn't need it there in the first place. I use it because I'm like, I want to keep up the pace of the story. Typically the story, I write pretty fast pace. So typically the story is already fast paced. I didn't need to change it. If I still want to indicate that something happened really fast or really suddenly, then I will, you know, find some like replacement tool I can put in there instead. But like 70 to 80% of the time, I don't need anything there at all. I'll just take it out and leave it. And I'm like, is this okay? And you're like, yeah. And I'm like, I guess it's okay.
I guess you're right. It does sound good.
It does sound fine.
Yeah, because I do think crutch word, and again, you're all going to have like different crutch words. You might have some overlap with other people, but I think really what they are indicating is probably like you upon first draft trying to get the beats of the story right. And so you're saying suddenly, as in this is another beat, or I say they smiled because I'm indicating a connection between the characters or whatever. And upon first draft, that can be very helpful. And then when you're editing through and you're focused more, you're not trying to do it as fast because you're more focused on the editing piece and you're giving more time to every sentence, assumingly. You can figure out another way to keep up that beat. Like maybe you know, take out a line, add a line, do different word choice, whatever. But you're probably using it because in that like first draft mindset, you're marking it for yourself, like, and then this happened, and then this happened. And each time you kind of use your crutch word, it's a different mark of like equivalent things that have happened in between. Like time-wise or emotionally.
The tone, because to me, like when I say smiled, usually that means the tone is shifting to something a lot slower or calmer for a brief period. If it's something like, if it's something that's happening in a moment of action and it's like smile, I always say grinned. Always for some reason.
Because it's a little more
faster
mischievous
thing to do. Exactly. It's just like a quicker action. But smiled for me always marks a shift, like a what do you call it? Like a decrease in speed of the plot for a little while. And suddenly was always my mark of, and we're moving on. Everything's happening quickly now, but I need to stop doing that. I don't use smile. I don't think too much, but I use adverbs a lot, which are more of a filler word than a crutch word. But I probably rely on adverbs in the way that I also rely on crutch words. So I do take a lot of them out in the edit. I need to remember that when I'm editing.
And it really is just being mindful about it and knowing that, okay, I need to maybe do an edit specifically with this in mind, or I need to do a read through, or I need to tell people that read this book, like your beta readers, like, can you guys tell me if you think I'm using
Mhm.
this too much? And them being aware of it, they're going to notice it more. If you say to someone, can you tell me every time I use the word smirked? Or like, can you tell
Yeah.
me if it's too much? They're more mindful of it. So they're probably going to lean on the side of it's too much because they're paying attention to
Because they're
it.
looking for it.
Right. But that's good
Yeah.
because then if they point it out to you and you take it out and you fix it and it works, then you don't have to use it as much.
It's true. Also, if you guys are trying to see if you use too many adverbs, this is the one I use a lot. So if you type in ly in the search bar, because not a lot of words have L and Y next to each other, you'll
Yeah.
get a lot of adverbs. If you're getting
Yep.
an insane number, it's too many adverbs.
Yeah,
I
that's
do
right.
that all the time.
Yep.
Way too many. Suddenly is also an adverb, isn't it? Isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, because
Yeah.
sudden is an adjective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Suddenly. Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
Suddenly. God, I love my adverbs, but I don't want them in my writing, but I do
Right.
love them
Stand
because
out.
verbally they're excellent. Okay. For oral
Mhm.
storytelling, adverbs
They
are
are.
great. Yep.
Yep. I agree, but with writing, again, like you always say, you want to be more concise, and adverbs just add space. And your crutch words are probably adding space as well. But crutch words are a little more about word choice. Again, don't just look up synonyms and think that you're fine, but
No.
really they're
Yeah.
just about variety because you don't want it to read robotically. Really, the problem with like filler words and crutch words and how much to use them is this balance between you don't want to sound robotic, but you don't want to sound like your oral storytelling. So you're trying
Yes.
to get to that middle ground where it reads like a book, but it doesn't, read
Yeah.
like an academic paper.
Yes.
So
It is a very difficult balance, and people tend to
mhm.
come down. I would say, I'm going to make this generality about newer writers because I've worked with a
Mhm.
lot of them. I would say tend to come down really dramatically on one side or the other when you first
Yes,
start writing. And then people who've been writing for a while tend to find a kind of a balance and they'll lean a little more one way than the other. And
exactly.
that just, I think, tells me that the more you write, the better you get at finding the balance. So when you
Yeah.
feel like you've been writing for a little while, you've probably struck that balance a little bit more. And then at that point, I think it's time to get other people in looking at your work. Because if I hadn't had Karissa edit my stuff, I wouldn't have ever noticed that I use suddenly so much.
Right.
I
Because it's
never,
your
ever
crutch
would have.
word. It's just
Yeah,
there for you. You're like, this is just the way that people write. This is just a word that's because
exactly.
something like the, we use the and an and those kinds of words all the time because there's no real replacement and they're almost
Yeah.
invisible. They're just there for grammatical purposes. They don't really have a meaning for us. We kind of
Yeah.
skip over them. But we do tend to, I think, treat certain words like suddenly or like smirked, and we treat them that way, but they're not. They actually
Nope.
have a definition. And so other people reading it are going to A, notice and B, potentially be bothered by it. So
Yeah,
you want to make sure
I
that
agree.
you're
So
on
if you're
point with
sitting
that.
here and you're going, I don't think I have any of those, ask somebody else to read your book. Ask another writer who's been writing for a while to read your book critically.
Yep.
You have them. Everyone
Yeah.
does.
And it's also important to remember too, I think I said this, but I want to reiterate that part of your style as a writer is going to be like the ratio for which you use certain words. So
Yeah.
if you do use smirked more often, like I do, like that's not inherently a bad thing if they are spaced well. Like it doesn't feel like some kind of repetitive thing. If you use it twice, maybe even 3 times a page, but only every so often, that's probably fine. But someone like Ash might not use them at all in an entire chapter. I don't know that I've ever written a chapter in my life that didn't contain the word smirked.
I definitely have. I definitely have.
And that's just a style difference at this point. But like back when I was first writing, it was a problem because I was using it too much.
I've never written a
So
chapter without the word suddenly. Probably never written a chapter without the word suddenly in it multiple times.
right, exactly. And so again, first draft, it's totally fine. And then you just kind of have to find that balance of, is this part of my style that I just use this more often than other people? Or is it kind of an error, a mistake that I need to, rework and see if I can do it better? So Sarah J. Maas, is that, wow, I just feel like I said her name wrong. Is that her name?
I literally was asking myself that the other day because I was re-listening to our episode where you joined us for That Pretentious Book Club when we talked about Akatar. You guys, it's a good one. You guys should go listen to it.
It is.
And I was like, is that how we say her name? Who's saying her name right?
For some reason, the J
Moss,
feels wrong.
Moss?
There's a
Sarah
J in there, right?
Yes,
Sarah J.
I
Maas.
believe so. Sarah J. Moss, I
Wow.
think.
That was a weird brain moment. So Sarah J. Maas, of course, bigger authors, people are going to notice it more, but she tends to get like criticized or teased about the fact that she uses the word mate and the word growl a lot. And so
I hate the first one
Ash is
so
disgusted.
much.
Yeah.
I just stuck my tongue out. I'm sorry. I know that was also
okay.
disgusting, but that's how I feel on the inside when
that was a
say the word
representation.
mate. bleh.
Yeah.
Growl is,
So
she does use it a lot. That's true.
does, and she leans on them, and to a certain degree that might just be her writing style, and that's totally fine. You know, if you're reading a book and you're like, wow, the word growl has been used a lot, is this a Moss book? And so you can kind of tell,
Probably.
like, stylistically that that's hers.
Yeah.
And I think also not even words, but a lot of writers, me included, tend to lean on certain metaphors or certain like similes that are common. And
Yeah.
again, if it works and you're not doing it so close in not repetition. If you're doing it a lot in a row,
Yeah.
that's going to be a problem. But if you just use it like 3 or 4 times over the book, I don't think that that's a huge deal. I think readers will understand that's a style thing.
I agree. Same with your crutch words and filler words and even your adverbs. It's okay to use them. And maybe you use more or less because it's your style, but don't use it's just my style as an excuse to not consider if you needed to write it that way.
Yes, that's the difference.
Exactly. And I think we probably say it every single episode. Just be intentional and make sure you're doing it on purpose. If you're using a lot of adverbs, I do use a lot of adverbs and I do it on purpose. Some of them I probably still need to take out. I probably go a little too hard, but I am aware that I do it and I do it on purpose because I still try and mix it up with a lot of other ways of describing things. I try to not only rest on adverbs, still need to cut more of them, but I do leave some in there on purpose because it's part of my style. I still use suddenly sometimes. Because it's my style. I might use it more than other people, but I do try to cut down on it a lot. So just know what you do, why you do it, and when you should cut it, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
and that defines your voice, and that defines, your career.
Yeah. And like we've kind of been talking, the difference between your dialogue and the prose is also going to matter. So I do think your dialogue is going to change more over time. Obviously, every book has its own voice, but really your style is going to be maintained relatively consistently throughout everything that you write.
Yeah,
but you want to be maybe a little more intentional in your dialogue, like so like you're going to get to a point where you have your writing style, and before that point you need to be thinking about what your crutch words are and what your filler words are and developing that style to figure out that balance. But even after that, once you have your style, it's going to come a little more instinctually to cut that kind of stuff because you have your style, but you're still going to have to be really intentional about dialogue because the characters are going to change per book.
The characters don't speak in your style of storytelling. So you have to keep that in mind. Your narration can, I think, your prose can stick closer to your style unless your narrator is also a character like Lemony Snicket. But other than that, your prose, the style of your prose will largely be the same from book to book when you kind of have it nailed down. But yeah, I agree. Be careful that you're not doing that with your characters because then your characters are all going to seem the same, which some, I think, authors do kind of end up doing. They just end up writing the same cast of characters over and over again in different books.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. I mean, obviously through a series you have the same characters, but again, they're going to be growing too. So they should be changing at least a little bit per book.
Yeah.
So you don't want to try to make every character just like you so that the voice matches.
Yeah.
But the prose can generally match. And again, you need to grow as a writer. You need to understand, like, is this a style thing or is this a mistake thing? But at some point do lean into your prose and that's fine. But then understand the dialogue has to be more intentional.
Yeah. What is it? There's a Taylor Tomlinson has something she says in one of her comedy routines. Like, what is it? She says something like, is this like a funny quirk or is this a phase or is this who I am?
Yeah.
I think that's hysterical. And that's a great question to ask.
That's a good rule of thumb, actually. Let's always be thinking that. Is this a phase or is this who I am?
Because as an author, and all of our advice, once again, is really for people who are trying to make a career out of writing. If you're just doing it for fun, it doesn't matter as much. I mean, maybe it matters to you personally, but like in a practical sense, it doesn't matter as much. But if you are trying to make a career out of it, this is all just stuff to keep in mind. Yeah. I lost the thread there a little bit, but
no, it's good.
I ended with it strong.
Yeah, I feel like that's all I had to say about that.
Cool.
Unless you had anything.
No, I thought I wasn't going to have much to say because I was like, I'm not sure I understand our topic, but I know that Karissa will explain it to me because she's smarter than me. And then I was like, oh, wait, no, I love this topic.
I know what this is.
I know this. What a relief since I'm like, also one of the co-hosts of this podcast.
Right? I do think it's very crutch words and filler words are very relatable because I do think a lot of writers struggle with those because the difference between speech and writing is just such a common struggle to balance.
It is,
but I just don't like sometimes when people are like, just lean into it because it's your style. And
not always.
You have to understand the balance. So
yeah, exactly. Some of it's your style. Some of it's a mistake.
Exactly. Some of it is because you think that you're being nice, but you're actually undermining your own point and you don't want to do that.
Exactly. Like some of your personality that people don't like, some of that is just you and it's awesome. Some of it's a mistake. Fix
Yeah,
yourself. That's
exactly.
just humanity, yo. I'm not trying to
Writing
be
is
mean, but
just life.
it is
So
though.
it applies everywhere.
This is how we get into like random like philosophical commentaries all the time. Is
Yeah.
because writing is just life and it's supposed to be a reflection of life in humans. So if you guys ever think we're off on a tangent, we are, but
But also not.
we're also not. Yeah, we
Yeah.
started in writing and we always come back to writing because
Hmm.
writing is just a reflection of life. So
Yep.
and get that on a t-shirt. We'll make it
Yeah.
catchy. I know it just sounds
Make
more
it.
like intellectual than catchy, but we'll make it catchy.
Make it work.
Yeah. Anyways, do you have any writing updates?
I do. I think I already told you I started writing that new book about what did I
Uh-huh.
tell you about it? I said it's like a masquerade.
Yes. You said it had
Um,
like kind of like Caraval energy, but
yes.
very different.
What was I think? I was relating it to something else also. Now I'm
Was
not
it
gonna remember.
Mom or Kendall? One of them was telling
Yeah,
me about it because you told them about it,
I told
or
Kendall
D
about
and D.
it.
You told Kendall, and then Kendall was
Yeah,
telling me about it. And she's like,
yeah.
"It sounds so cool." I think my mom must have overheard because I do distinctly remember talking about it with my mom, and she's like, "Do you know
Okay.
anything else about it?" And I was like, "I don't, I don't know anything else."
Because there's so many elements, and I really don't feel like these are spoilery, so I feel cool telling you guys. So it is a masquerade, and it's like they're trapped in the masquerade. They can't leave, and they
Mm-hmm.
can't leave until one of the people in the masquerade like solves all the puzzles and gets to like the treasure at the center of the masquerade. And the prize for this is, of course, getting to marry the prince, which feels very fairy tale, which is kind of
I
strange for
love
me,
it. That
but
is strange for
there
you, and I'm into it for you.
yeah, there's some kind of dark turns that I'm planning with it. Cause it's not, there's also a murder mystery because people start getting murdered. And basically, the
Hell
idea is that
yeah.
anything goes in this masquerade. Like, you're not going to be punished for anything you do. It is winner survives whatever
That's
happens to come.
terrifying.
So there are like all these contestants, and like probably 80% of the people in are not contestants. They're just there because they provide conflict and struggle for the contestants, and so they get entertainment, and then the contestants get a bigger
Wow.
challenge. So anyway, it's there's a lot of stuff going on in terms of like motives and stuff, and so the draft is really bad. It's really bad so far. But it's
I
really
love it.
good, you know what I mean? Like a lot
Yeah.
of inconsistencies. And so the thing about my main character is that she is her like individual magical power, right? You know what I mean? It's like a
Hmm.
world thing for me.
Yeah.
So it takes place in the same universe. Her thing is that she is immune to all magic, and she's trying to hide this because people are looking at
Ooh.
her, like looking for her. But it's really hard because the whole thing is magic. So she just like isn't susceptible to all the stuff going on. And like she can't see the illusions, and she isn't affected by like rooms that have magic in them. So she's just trying to fake it. And then people are like
Oh my
using their magic
gosh.
on her, and she has to gauge what their ability is to fake that it's working on her. And it's really fun.
Wow. I'm
But
really stressed out for her right now.
I know it's so much. But the thing is that there was this one character that total like brain plot hole. I had her susceptible to his magic the entire book. So I had to go back and change it. And because she can't be, like she cannot be
Yeah.
susceptible, or else it ruins like her
Do they fall
character
in
arc and
love?
stuff.
Because then maybe
Maybe.
he's her weakness.
I know that's a possibility, but I did a lot of brainstorming to
You're
think
like,
like,
no, I've
can
thought
I
about
keep her
that.
susceptible, or does she
Yeah.
have to be immune? But I thought it was better if she's like trying to hide it from him, and so she's
Yeah.
faking it, which is really fun. But it's really hard because it's in the same world that I've written a lot of books in, and no one else has
Yeah.
had this ability. So I'm so used to people just all being susceptible to each other's magical powers.
Oh my
And so
God.
it's just slipping in sometimes that
This is
she's
so
like,
trippy.
and then this, so like there's this room with a bunch of mirrors, and they're
Yeah.
magical, and so they
Uh-huh.
reflect like you a couple seconds into the future and stuff like that. And I'm
Yeah.
writing that that's happening to her, and I'm like, nope, they can't do that because she's immune to them. So it's stressful for me in terms of the continuity, and I know that I can just do that later. I know that I should
Yes.
just write it all out and come back to it later, but
Yeah.
this was such a big plot issue that I needed to fix it so that I could go forward. So I did that, and it actually didn't take that long. I just did
Nice.
a search for a certain word that would be in all of those scenes, and then I found them all, and it was fine. But so I have been
Nice.
writing. I'm at, what am I at? I have it open right here. Let's see. I think I'm at 30,000. I'm at 43,000 words.
Ooh,
Which
you
is
go,
pretty good.
girl. That's awesome.
Also struggling with the pacing. This is probably one of the rougher books I've ever written. Coming off of last year when it was coming relatively more easily. Um, so 43,000, I'm probably going to only keep like 30,000 of them because the pacing is so weird because there's this treasure hunt that they're following. And also no one knows each other before they go in. So I'm trying to develop their relationships, but then certain beats in the relationships have to happen before certain beats in the treasure hunt and before the murder mystery. And so I'm like,
That's
how do I time
difficult.
different things? So I'm hoping that that's something I can like, fix in post or whatever the writing equivalent is.
Fix in post. Edit.
Edit. It doesn't sound as cool as fix in post.
No, I agree.
Yeah, so I know that I will just fix it later.
Yeah.
But I tend to edit it as I go. And I know people say not to do that and like whatever, but I tend to do that a little bit more because I want when it occurs to me, I want to fix it so that future me doesn't forget.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's what I've been doing. And I really like it. And I was struggling with the main character does have a love interest that, she may or may not be mean to.
Love it.
But their relationship is so weird because he's not a bad boy, but he's kind of a jerk up front. And he has reason. He's not a jerk. He looks like a jerk, but it's really just that he's really focused on something else and he doesn't think that she can help him. And then it kind of develops into something later. But there's this side couple that, gosh, I want to tell you so much about it.
I want to know so much about this. I'm so enjoying this.
Okay, so it's to win like the marriage to the prince, right?
Right.
And
is he the prince?
He doesn't have a choice. He is in this. He's already in love. And he already knows who he wants to marry. And she wants to marry him too. So she has to enter this thing to get to marry him. And they're like both super stressed about this and like trying to sabotage the other players because they want her to win.
Yeah.
And they have so much chemistry. And I love them, but there's no point of view from either of their perspectives. I'm like, is there a way that I can I'm like, can my main character just spy on them? But she wouldn't do that. She's not like that. So I had to like create this magical thing that they would be able to like hear her conversations with him because there's just this really fun scene that I wanted to write that didn't have a place otherwise. So anyway, it's just a lot and it's really fun, but I don't know that it's good yet because I want to send it to you and I want people to read it, but like it's really not good yet. But what it could be is really great.
Yeah.
That's really the gist.
Well, I like the gist. I like the gist of what I've been told. It's exciting. I also like that you're doing the murder mystery angle because that's obviously what I'm doing with the cozy mysteries. So we can do murder mystery strategy. It is particularly hard when you're writing a mystery because if all of your beats aren't in order, then different people have different information at different times. And then you're like, well, this person couldn't have come to that conclusion because they didn't have that information because that thing hadn't happened or it hadn't happened in front of the right person yet. And it is difficult. It is kind of like mental acrobatics when you're writing a mystery of any sort. So if you guys haven't done that before, I encourage you to give it a shot if you want a headache. It's
if you find yourself in need of a headache, this is a great way.
You're like, I don't feel like I'm challenged enough in life. I just want to hurt a little bit. Maybe I'll write a mystery.
Yeah, for real. Because like there's this one point when she feels like the murderer might be coming after her, and I was writing this whole scene about it, and I'm like, there's no reason the murderer would be after her yet. She hasn't done the thing that she needs to have done.
Yeah. So, no, I completely understand the struggle. Yeah.
But and also I like to challenge myself. It takes place in 1498. So there's no like forensic science. There's no like anything, but there's magic. And so like magic is kind of
that's more
the ballast for that. Yeah. So they have no fingerprints. They're like, who killed them? And everyone's like, well, we didn't see anyone near the room. And they're like, well, I guess we don't know then.
See, here's my problem is that's still how I approach mysteries. I listen to so much true crime and I still am always like, oh wait, forensics exist in this universe. I could do that. And I'm always like, no, I'm going to make them find out through everything through word of mouth, I think.
Exactly. Because then it's conversation and it's more exciting from a writing perspective.
It's also, it is cozy mysteries and not like police thrillers or true crime thrillers or like detective books. So their cozy mysteries are typically your main character is someone who is not in any way qualified to be investigating this murder. So they don't have access to all those resources, or if they do, it's just because they know someone who has access. And so I feel like I can't use them as much if I did even know how to use them. And I don't know, it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
But you were saying about your book. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, it's okay. I think that's all I'm going to say. I feel like that's a lot, but I also feel like you still don't know anything
I
about
still
it.
don't know
So
anything about it.
yeah.
But I'm
Um,
excited to know more.
I know. I just feel like this premise is easy to share a lot about without spoiling anything.
Yeah.
So I'm leaning into that because that does not happen very often for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm
I love
excited.
that. That
So
is exciting.
yeah.
Let's see, in my end, I've not done any of my own writing. I've thought about it a lot. It's so close. I could have just flipped the switch on my free write and written that instead. But
Mhm.
instead, in 3 days, I have written 17,500 words of the first cozy mystery. And
Yay.
I'm running into this problem where the last series of cozy mysteries I was hired to ghostwrite was they were only supposed to be on an average of 20,000 words a book. They were like novellas,
Oh.
and it was awesome. Because here's the thing is about cozy mysteries is they're not, that not that they're not works of art, but they're not in certain ways, not in the same way that
Yeah.
other books are. They're
They're not
not as
trying to be deep.
involved. No, they're
Yeah.
not trying to be deep. They're not as involved. There's just not as much to them. And that's okay. That's the whole genre. That's the point of the genre. That's a hallmark of the genre.
Mhm.
Ironically, Hallmark does really well at that
But
genre. I know it was an accident, but it was a good one. Um, so 20,000 words actually felt like a really good amount of time to tell a cozy mystery.
Mhm.
50,000 words, I realized this morning, because this morning I was at 11,000 words, and I was like, okay, I'm like halfway through the plot right now, and I still
Mhm.
have
I'm so close
40,000
to being
words to
done.
go.
Yeah.
So I had to like add in a bunch of filler, which I hate doing. I mean, so I'm trying to
Mhm.
add filler that's still like kind of relevant to the plot, but it goes against everything inside of me to do that because you know me,
Yeah.
I like concise, I like getting
Mhm.
to the point. And so it's really painful for me to like add this random filler. Like I'm like, now she's going on a blind date. Does it have anything to do with the mystery? No, it doesn't. It has nothing to do with the mystery. Am I going to kind of tie it into the plot? Yeah, kind of. But it doesn't need to be happening. And so
Mhm.
anyways, so that's a thing. That's a thing that's happening. And I can't say much about it because of the NDA, but I will say there's a whole subgenre of cozy mysteries. I hope you
I
guys
know it's
could hear
coming.
that sigh. Where there are animal sidekicks and some of those animal sidekicks talk. So
Mhm. In
just,
human language.
yep. And I can't say anything else. But if you guys are watching this on YouTube, hopefully you can see my expression and you can see the pain in that expression. Because the first thing I've said to everyone who knows me is, what's the one thing I hate? Talking animals. I hate it. I've always hated it. I never liked the talking animal movies. Someone was like, Zootopia is great. And I was like, why are they talking? They're animals. And I don't
Doesn't
know
make any
why.
sense.
It doesn't make any sense. And I don't understand why I'm like this because I'm like not someone who's like, it's got to be reality based or it's
Yeah.
stupid. Like that's not me. I don't know why this bothers me so much. It just bothers me so much. It feels so infantile. It's not even childish. It feels infantile to me. And so I'm
Right.
like, I can't believe that this is a genre of cozy mysteries. I can't believe I was hired to do this. They didn't tell me when I accepted the job that it was in this
Mhm.
subgenre of cozy mysteries. So I'm like,
Yeah.
dying right now. But anyways,
So fun.
I am also the last time I wrote cozy mystery, like a cozy mystery series, which I also can't say anything about, was not an animal one. I can say that it was not an animal one. So in that sense, it was easier. It was shorter, like I said, which was a lot easier. Um, but I also like didn't put in that much imaginative effort, if that makes sense. I was like, I'm gonna do the absolute bare minimum because that's all the genre
Mhm.
requires of me.
Yeah.
So in this one, just because it's been so long since I've like been able to justify spending a lot of time on writing, I'm putting in effort, honestly, just to get into practice of putting in effort again, which is kind of
Mhm.
weird. So I'm like, I mean, for a cozy mystery, I think this is like a high skill level.
Yeah.
Like definitely
Like I'm
putting
doing
more into
great.
this than the cozy mystery as a genre requires of me.
Mhm.
This is no hate to cozy mysteries. They are mysteries that are cozy. That's
Mhm.
the whole idea. It's
Yeah.
just that so the requirements of the genre are so different than like a normal mystery. And that's
Mhm.
okay. It's just not generally my vibe. So anyways, so I'm doing that and it's a little bit painful because it's not what I want to be working on. I'm like, if I'm
Yeah.
going to justify spending this much time writing every day, because I'm trying to write, like I said, I think 5,000 words a day. If I'm going to try and do that, and that means sacrificing all the rest of my weekdays, I want it to be on what I care about. However, I'm not currently getting paid for what I care about. And I'm getting paid for this. Am I getting paid much? No, I'm getting paid what it breaks down to is about a little bit, just a little bit over minimum wage per hour. So that's
Yeah.
not great, but it's like having another part-time job basically. And right now that's useful. And so I can justify it. But it also makes me mad because I'm like, I was capable of it this whole time. I was capable of putting in this effort the whole time.
Yeah.
But it was so hard to justify to my brain to do it because I wasn't actively making money that I felt like now I wasted all that time. Although I'm fully busy. So like I'm just having to put other things on the back burner now to do this instead. But
The
I'm like, you're
priorities are
telling me
different.
I could have put that shit on the back burner before to work on my own stuff, but
I've
no,
been doing
because
this for years.
exactly, but I couldn't because I couldn't justify to myself putting that stuff on the back burner for something that wasn't going to make me money right away. Which is, I know that my mindset is wrong on this, but I also know it's a little bit right. And so this is where I'm having the problem because I'm like, Ash, you need to reset how you're thinking. I'm in a deep existential crisis about this.
Oh no.
So anyways, I don't know what the solution is because the thing is, like, I can't just be like, Ash, wow, that's totally the wrong way to think about it. From now on, you're going to know you can prioritize your writing above all else. But I don't live in a magical fairy world where that's always the case.
You can't change who you are because it's convenient? What are you talking about?
I can't. And also, I can't justify not using some of my extra time to make extra money at the moment, like while we're trying to like build the house and stuff. Like we do need extra income right now. So I do need to be making an effort to make extra money in some way or other. So like that is true. And yes, it is a choice. And so I'm torn because the thing is, my approach initially that was wrong in a lot of ways, still like there's a core truth at the foundation of it. So I'm like, I don't know what to keep and what I can lose about that approach. And so anyway, so I'm like just actively mad about a completely different topic while I'm writing these cozy mysteries. I'm like mad that I'm not working on my own stuff, even though I wouldn't have been working on it right now anyways.
Right.
And I'm just living for our writing retreat because my mom was like, when are you going to write that other book you were talking about? And I'm like, the writing retreat because it's going to be dedicated to only my book. And I'm setting that out in advance and I can write a lot in a week. Obviously, I wrote 17,000 words in 3 days. I can do that. Right. So anyways, that's what I'm living for at this point.
So much anger, so much emotion. So much,
I know, anger and angst and emotion. Yeah, I mean, I probably didn't use any hedging words at all just now.
I know. So I'm not even criticizing you. I get mad about my own writing, so I can't even imagine like not wanting to do it and then everything compounding. So
yeah, I mean, because the thing is that I do want to. I just always feel like I can't justify it, and now I'm like, really, this is all minimum wage is all it took to justify it for me. Seriously. But it is though. And I'm like, how can I change what it feels justified to me?
You should just like reward yourself in some way. Like every time you get your paycheck, you are only allowed to use so much of it based on how many words you wrote in your own book or something like that. Just like give yourself an extra layer.
That's really hard though, because I already don't spend any money on myself. I only pay for all the essentials.
I know.
Which might be part of the problem, which is also why I'm like, I can justify doing this for minimum wage because if I don't, I'm going to have no extra money at all. Like none. None. Like I pay the bills and that's it. And I'm very grateful that I can do that. I feel very grateful for that. But it's just, you know what, if I was rich, that's the thing. You'd always think about what you would do if you were rich. You know, some people are like, oh, I'd be lazy. I'd just sit around all day and not know what to do with myself. I'm like, I would be productive AF if I was rich.
Right?
God. I could get
all the things I want to do.
Yes. It'd be awesome. Anyways, that's my writing update / like Ash's complaint corner. Hope I didn't give you guys too much of info about the book for the NDA. I don't think that I did. I don't think you guys can pick it out of the lineup, which is the whole idea.
Yeah.
Cozy There are also, God, maybe millions, maybe more of cozy mysteries. It's a flooded corner of the market on purpose all the time. So I don't know. Anyways, it's just cozy mysteries. I have obviously a lot of feelings about cozy mysteries. Like I'll watch them on TV, but I would never pick one up to read. So writing one is a very weird experience. And I'm doing it again. I wrote 5 of them before. I'm writing 6 of them now. So why do I keep doing this to myself?
It's your own fault, but also good job.
Thanks. And it is. Yeah. Anyways, is there anything else we want to tell people?
Nope. I'm good.
Nope. All right, we'll leave you on that hopeless note, everybody. I'm just kidding. Or am I? Life is so hard sometimes. Oh, I'm so blessed. I can't complain. Anyways, I'm just going to keep going. I love you guys. Thanks y'all for showing up. You guys are great. You guys are great writers. You have stories that no one else can tell but you. So hang on to that. Even if it's a cozy mystery, you're the only one who can tell it the way that you can tell it.
Yes.
If you guys want to follow us on social media, I think that's a great idea because you can see all of the stuff that we talk about in the episodes. Chris will put like little tips and summaries of stuff that we've chatted about on Instagram at the Scripturient Society, or you guys can visit us on TikTok, also at the Scripturient Society, for Carissa's wildly popular comedy videos about writing.
Thank you.
Highly suggest you go look at those if you haven't. They're pretty spectacular. I also added some, I'm very proud of myself, to my at Ash O'Rourke Books and at That Pretentious Book Club on TikTok recently. So very proud of myself. They were just a bunch of audio clips from past episodes on That Pretentious Book Club. And the ones on mine were just the ones where you do the filter everyone else is doing. It'll like tell you who your godly parent is, like that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still like, it was an effort. I put in some effort. So I was procrastinating because I didn't want to work on the cozy mystery. But it's there. So, but really go follow at the Scripturient Society. And if you guys like this episode and or any of our episodes and or a single word that we said, if you guys want to go down below and give us a 5-star review, that would be spectacular. And also perhaps more importantly, actually definitely more importantly, is tell your writer friends about us. That is the way that podcasts grow. It's always been the way. We could do paid advertisements out the wazoo and none of it's going to make as much of a difference as you bringing y'all's writer friends in here and us building a writing community, which is just exactly what we want to do. That's the dream. And on that note, if you guys want to join our writing group, you can do that. It is now on Discord. So it's really easy. If you guys have not made a Discord, go do it. It's free. And in the episode description below, you will see a link. You can just click it. You can join the Discord group. There are all kinds of little channels on there. You can talk about your hobbies, you can, which is probably writing, and some other stuff. You can talk about your pets. You can talk about the books you're reading. You can talk about the books you're writing. You can talk about anything. And if you guys want to chat with us, not on that, you guys can also message us on social media or email us at contact@storysirenstudio.com. And as our final little business corner thing, if you guys want to support the pod and or you just want some really cool merch just to tell the whole world, hey, I'm a writer and I'm better than you, you guys can go to storysirenstudio.com and check out the cool merch that we've got there. I think that's everything we've got for you guys. So hope to see you guys in the Discord writing group, and we'll see you next week. Until then, keep writing.
And we'll see you on the next page.